Contrary to what you might be thinking, these are not Bruce Banner's anal beads. These are in fact Brussels sprouts, and this is what they look like before they have been bagged and put at the grocery store. They grow in long stalks, and you can really see how these are pretty much just cabbages that have been grown for a specific purpose. Brussels sprouts used to be really bad. They used to taste gross because they used to taste really, really bitter, but that has long since been literally selectively bred out of them. Younger people might understand Brussels sprouts as just a tasty vegetable sides, and elder millennials might look at Brussels sprouts and be like, ew, that's gross, if they haven't gone out to eat in the past 10 years. So today's meal prep primer, we're gonna focus on these supremely healthy and easy to prepare vegetables, but also from that, you'll be able to use what you learned in this video to make actually a really good side for your holiday dinner, like Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever. Because meal prepping is really just cooking for an entire week inside one day. And what is it called when you eat an entire week's worth of food in one day? You call that Thanksgiving. So if you did purchase your Brussels sprouts like this, the first thing you need to do is simply just to cut the little Brussels, I don't even know what they're called, but to cut the little tiny cabbage parts, the Brussels sprouts that you know and love, off of the stalk itself. The stalk is pretty woody and completely inedible, so that part will either have to be composted or discarded, but it is pretty easy just to cut them off in this way. Now when you cut them off, make sure to try to take off as little bit of the Brussels stem as possible, because look what happens if you cut off too much of it, which this is a mistake a lot of people do. So if you cut that off, you pretty much just, as you cook, the leaves will come off and you'll be left with just the little bit. You want all of these parts because these, when you roast them, are the parts that get nice and crispy. This will still be fine, but this will be the flavor bomb of your Brussels sprouts, and you don't want to lose that. Also, as a little side note, Brussels sprouts make great dog treats. So now that we have our Brussels cut, the first thing we're gonna do is blanch them. And the reason why you want to do that is to A, seal in the color. Make sure as you roast or saute your Brussels sprouts, you still want them to be quite green. Blanching them does that, so you only do this for a couple of minutes. And also, it helps steam out some of the water that is in the Brussels sprouts innately. So it's kind of like when you're making mashed potatoes. You want them to steam out to get rid of as much water as possible, which makes them a little bit more crispy. Anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes, you should be good. Now this is an optional step, but taking them out a little bit early, around the 4-minute mark, and then putting them on a rack to kind of steam out really helps get rid of the excess moisture from the Brussels sprouts while still maximizing the amount of greenness that they have. You could just shock these in a bowl of ice water after 5 minutes of blanching, and that would be totally fine. But this way, I think this gets you a better overall result to just let them cool on a rack like this and then half and roast them, which is what we're gonna do after. Yeah, just a completely optional step at this point. So the next thing you do, you'll just cut them in half. This is why you see keeping the stem on is so important. This way the leaves of your Brussels stay nice and intact, and it'll stay pretty throughout the cooking process. So you just wanna do all of these to your Brussels sprouts. At this point, you might notice that your Brussels sprouts will start smelling like boiled cabbage, because that is exactly what they are. It is not the most pleasant smell. It's like vegetable farts is kind of how I would describe it right now. But do not worry, we are going to roast that aroma out of them. But it's totally normal at this point if you're getting hints of vegetable farts. Now with my Brussels sprouts nicely halved, the next thing we do is just to oil them up and season them and then set them on the pan to roast. There's 3 cups of halved cooked Brussels sprouts here. For this many, I would say maybe 2 tablespoons of oil and then a pinch of salt and pepper if you were just gonna do this plain for your meal prep, keeping it simple, keeping it healthy. And that's what we're gonna do for half of them. And then the other half, we're gonna do it as if it were a Thanksgiving side, and then we're gonna do those just seasoned all the way. So this will be the meal prep half. And since it's half of that, just like 1 tablespoon of olive oil, salt and pepper. Mix. And based on whatever you're doing, like however you want to season it, you can also do just a touch of garlic powder as well as some chili powder. All of these are low or to no sodium, except for the salt, and fat sources of flavor. And you just lay them down, and now you're ready to roast. Now, if you were gonna do this as a Thanksgiving side, this is your reputation on the table, because now you're up to the judgment of all of your aunties and uncles. So you certainly need to fuck some shit up. And how do you do that? You simply just disregard the health of all of the people that you are serving to. For a meal prep video, this might seem like a little bit much, but remember, we're trying to make them happy, not live longer. The first thing you're gonna do is double the amount of oil that you're going to use, or at least 1.5 times the amount of oil. And for even more richness of flavor, I'm going to, instead of just using regular oil, I'm gonna use ghee, which is a clarified butter, which means it's a butter with a high smoke point, but still has that really rich flavor. To do that, you need to first melt the ghee. And then to this ghee, we're going to add a little bit of Garam Masala, which is a sweeter, aromatic South Asian Indian spice blend. Once it starts to sizzle, add it to your Brussels sprouts. And then you're still adding the pepper. And we're not adding salt because there is one more thing that we're going to add to this. It's just a little bit of pancetta. So, back into the skillet. You are cooking the pancetta in the remainder, or what's left over from the garam masala and the ghee. You might be asking now is, couldn't you just cook the garam masala in with the pancetta? Yeah, sure, you could. That would be fine. But again, it's Thanksgiving. You want that extra fat to be in there because once it all roasts, everything gets really nice and crispy. Once that is all cooked a little bit, just add it in with your Brussels sprouts. And then give that a little mix as well. Now, knowing that the pancetta is in there, you don't need as much salt, but you still need a little bit. Just keep that in mind. Roasting time is largely the same. And if you're gonna make this ahead, you can do it up to this part, and then you could put this in the fridge, and then roast from here. They won't be as green, but that's okay. Roast in the oven for anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, or until it's crispy. I would check after 25. Now, if you were gonna saute your Brussels sprouts, oh, did I just miss this one? Here. Now, sauteing your Brussels sprouts is widely the same. You could also deep fry them, but we're not gonna get into that today because we're not trying to do too much. You just add your pancetta to the pan and then let the fat from this render out. Now, you can use garam masala with this very, very beautifully. As you saw, it works very well with the roast. It would work the same for saute. But if you did buy my Master Stock seasoning, this is one of the times to use it. It brings out the sweetness of the pork as well as the Brussels sprouts. So you just add this as it fries. To that, allow the rendering fat to wake up the spices. Now with the fat rendered and the spices nicely cooked, you can add in your Brussels sprouts. Add a little bit of salt, more pepper. You can see the caramelization, the beautiful crispiness that is starting to develop in there. These are the ones that have been sauteed, and obviously they are done much, much sooner. The downside is that you can only do as many as your pan will allow, and it requires a lot more active time. The ones in the oven might still be roasting, but I'm not doing anything. I can work on, say, another dish if I was preparing a larger Thanksgiving meal. This is a great way to prepare them otherwise. Super delicious. And hot. It's like nice and snappy, as a vegetable, like it's not mushy. It's still kind of like got a little bit of crispiness to it. And not too salty. The seasoning gives it a nice sweet aroma balance. So now here I have all side by side the done versions of each way of cooking the Brussels sprouts. Here we have the Thanksgiving version right here with the pancetta and the ghee and the garam masala. Here we have the healthier version with just salt and pepper and just a tiny little bit of olive oil. And then we have the master stock seasoning sauteed one with pancetta on this side too. We'll try this guy. Okay. The leaves are crispy. The insides are much softer than this way, but there's like, it's just really, really super tender and very, very flavorful. And honestly, the olive oil one is still pretty good. I would be happy to eat this every day of the week as a healthy side. It's filling, got tons of fiber. Today, we pretty much just illustrated the fact that meal prep is just cooking a lot, and you can do that for holiday dinners. Now, the final thing that I would add to all of this stuff, to get that like restaurant quality Brussels sprouts that you taste when you go out to fancy places, it's just balsamic vinegar. It's just a sweet, acidic splash of something that you add at the end to counteract the saltiness and the fattiness of whatever you cooked it in. So in this case, it's the pancetta. Yeah. Yeah, that's delightful. Brussels sprouts for meal prep or Thanksgiving. Enjoy.